Tafshin Mem Ches. Okay. Ish Tazriya v'yolda zachar, a woman that will take seed and she will give birth to a male. It's explained concerning this in the Torah of our parsha, which the Rebbe always refers to as a Chassidische parsha. There's an idea called to be Mavir, the Chassidische Seder of the week, which is to learn the Likkutei Torah and the Torah Or of the week. So that the Alter Rebbe in Likkutei Torah wants to explain, and we're going to have two reasons the Alter Rebbe speaks about why is that a woman being Mazriya Tchila was the one that gives birth to a male. What's the connection that a woman will give birth to a male? Seemingly, you logically would think a woman will bring about a woman. If the male is Mazriya Tchila, it should be the male. So the Amr Rabbi Seinu Zal, the Chazal say, Isha Mazras Tchila Yilad Zachar, if a woman is the one that's Mazriya first, that gives in the seed first, so then to give birth to a male. But Tamad Davar, the reason for this is, so this is the idea that Alter Rebbe explains in Likkutei Torah, and then he's going to bring another idea from the Alter Rebbe in Likkutei Torah. All matters in Kedusha are intermingled one from another. So ish ve'isha, the same thing, man and woman. The hainu zachar in the cave, which means a male and a female. V'heim chesed gvura, that's a level of chesed and gvura. That the male is the level of chesed and the female is the level of gvura. Yeah, that's also in Tanya, that the idea of chesed zachar chazdoi is the idea of, has to do with ava, but he used the term zachar chazdoi. And isha is the level of yiras Hashem mitasal. That's the idea of gvura. So he says, hareihim klum zemezeh. So that chesed and gvura of ish v'isha are intermingled one with another. Ubiz galus, and when we have in the revelation of the spheres, so then hareba chesed mizgala gvura. In the chesed, the gvura can become revealed. Ubegevura mizgala chesed, and in the gevura, the chesed can become revealed. They're not just one line. Gevura remains gevura, and chesed remains chesed. But chesed has a gevura component to it, and gevura has a chesed component to it. Then he brings an interesting example from how the world is made. So he says, in line at the end of line 8, just like it's in the simple sense in the physical world. On the southern side of the world, that is, we know the south is the level of the right, and the right has to do with chesed, because when you're facing Mizrach, so Dorim, the south is on the right, and Mizrach is the front, like we're going to mention in the bracket soon. So what do you see? That when it's in its revelation, what becomes revealed in the southern hemisphere? In the south, it becomes revealed the very powerful heat. Heat, fire, has to do with gevura. So even though it's yamin, it's chesed, you have the level of heat, which is fire and gevura. Therefore, the people from Africa are dark because of that heat of the sun and so on. It's also not settled, it's not civilized. The fact that it's not civilized and the fact that it's dark, so darkness and non-civilized, that shows all on the level of tzimtzum and gevura and constriction. So even though it's on the right, it's Dorim, it's the south, it has in it the gevura. So we see that the chesed that's in the south includes in it also the level of gevura, which is gevura is the manifestation of shachrus. Darkness is the level of gevura, and v'heder yishuv, and the idea of being unsettled, uncivilized, that's also an idea of gevura. Just the opposite we find in the north. On the other hand, betzad sof and shu smoilu gevura, the north, which is the left, and its severity, because again, looking at Mizrach, The north is on the left side. The left side has to do with Gevura. But what is the revelation? How does it manifest over there? The revelation is in the idea of the sphere of Chesed. The people in the northern hemisphere are white. And that's the primary settlement, the civilization of the 70 nations. Now, even though we talk only about two sides of the world, really there's four. So he says the two, he's going to say in the brackets, including them, all the four. So he says in line 16 in the brackets, and these two sides of north and south is included all the four sides, because ki mizrach nikra ponim, because the east is called the front. That's what's called yom etzafoin of a kedma. Kedma is the word kedem, the front. Umaydav nikra acher, and the west is called the back. Because the east is the front and the west is in the back, so therefore, if you're facing the front, you're facing towards the east. So the south is the right, and the north is the left. So the south and the north are really inclusive of all the different sides, right and left. But the main thing is that he wants to say that even though this is right and this is left, which is Chesed versus Gvura, the Chesed manifests itself in a way of Gvura because of Iskalus, and the Gevura manifests itself in a way of Chesed because of the Iskalus. That is in the physical world. Now he's going to bring in Hashem's names that we also find an idea of Hiskalus, of things that are Chesed containing Gevura, things that are Gevura containing Chesed. So he says in the end of line 18, so too it's above in the names that Hashem is called. There's the name of Ma, where Yud-Ke Vav-Ke is with the Miluyim, the all different types of ways how to calculate the numerical value of the Gematria of Shem Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, which is one of the ways is Shem Ma 45. Shem Ma has to do with Spheres HaChesed. The level of Shem Ban, that has to do with Gevura. And that's why usually Shem Ban has to do with the lower worlds, because there's a less revelation, it's more constricted. And then the Rebbe says, but it's not just only Ma and only Ban. There's a level of Shem Ban as it is part of Shem Ma, and there's the Ma of the Shem Ban. So once we've established that Chesed and Gevura are intermingled, and there's the Chesed, the way it becomes revealed in Gevura, and Gevura, the way it becomes revealed in Chesed, so the same thing, the Isha, which is Gevura, becomes revealed in Chesed, which is the Zachar. Line 2. This will be understood why when a woman takes seed first, or gives seed first, she gives birth to a male. The idea of the Hashpa, Tazriya, Isha, B'chinas Chesed Sheba. That is the level of Chesed. And therefore she gives birth to a male, B'chinas Chesed V'chulum. So the Hashpa'ah, the level of the Tazriya shows on Hashpa'ah. Hashpa'ah has to do with the male. The male is the Mashpia. So that's the level of Chesed. So since the Mashpia is the one that's responsible for this, therefore, Yelad Zachar Shebechinas Chesed. So it goes according to the Hashpa'ah of Tazriya. Well, the Fiza Mevair Sham, according to this, the Alter Rebbe explains over there in Torah. Also this topic in the avoid of a person, that a person also has to make sure, we learn out from this that we cannot be just one direction, just a level of Ava, just a level of Yira, just a level of Chesed, just a level of Gvura, but there needs to be the intermingling of both. So this is one explanation, and it's the final explanation, as we're soon going to say in Likutei Torah, about why Isha Mazras Chila Yilad Zachar, because it goes according to the Hashpa. the hashpah is coming from chesed, and therefore, since the hashpah is coming from chesed, the result is the level of zachar, which is the level of chesed as well. Now, the Rebbe is going to bring a suggestion that the Alter Rebbe had at the beginning of the Maimer of a different reason why this is so. Why Isha Mazras Tchila Yeled Zachar, which the Alter Rebbe does not follow and does not accept. And the Rebbe is going to want to see how do we, why does the Alter Rebbe even have to bring it in, and so on. Second paragraph, line 8. At the beginning of the Maimer, before he explains this explanation, maybe Pirish Acher b'Divir Hazal Anali brings a different explanation what the Chazal said. Isha Mazras Tchila Yeled Zachar. And how does he explain? He says as follows: Va'filosofim nitchu yashiv, and the philosophers went through great difficulty to be able to explain this. And this is what they said: Kilafi she'isha mazras tchila, since the woman is the one that's giving the seed first. Haritipas hazachar ba lachroina, since the droplet of seed from the male is coming last, v'ilah gavar, and the one that is on top, in other words, first there came the woman's seed. Now it's being followed by the male seed. So it comes out the male seed is on top. So the one that's on top overcomes and like decides the maleness of the child. Similar to what the Chazal say, that everything follows the conclusion and the end. So since the last thing was the male, so that determines that the child will be a male. So that was the original thing that the Alter Rebbe brought at the beginning of the Maimer. And then he says, and afterwards he pushes away this explanation. And explains in this like it's more in the simple sense. From the woman's seed comes the zachar, like we said before, because there's iskalus and so on. Now, the Rebbe says the very fact that the Alter Rebbe brings this in Likutei Torah, there's a lot of explanations about a lot of different things that the Alter Rebbe does not bring. He l'chatchila goes into the Chassidus approach, into the Pnimius HaTorah approach, into the Torah approach. He doesn't go in all the different things that there are in the world, all the different types of physical types of things. He says, you know what? There is the way the philosophers and the scientists explain it this way, but that's not correct. There's this and this. So the Rebbe says, if the Alter Rebbes bring this in Likutei Torah, there must be some purpose in this as well. Line 15. This is obvious. There's room in Torah also for the first explanation that since the male seed was the one that came last, that was on top of the female seed, so then that's why a male child is born. How come? Since this is brought down in Torah. And since it's brought down in Torah, even if it's dismissed, even a dismissed opinion in Torah is also Torah. Like it's brought down in a well-known letter of the Rebbe's father. Everything that it says in Torah. Even the halacha that they said, it's made up, it's bogus. So seemingly, it has no validity. So the Rebbe's father writes, Kulam mamash Omar Hashem. All of them, even that halacha, it was said by Hashem. Vehu atzmei Omar shebedusahi. And Hashem himself said, and this halacha is bedusa, it's made up. And the same thing, different matters that Chazal leave, that it remains, it's a question. It's like the Gemara often asks questions on something, and sometimes it will answer the questions, sometimes it'll just leave it hanging, and sometimes it says tiyufta. Tiyufta means it's already it's removed from the table. So he said even those halachas that it says in the Gemara tiyufta that we're not following that, it's not correct. Kulam Amoram Hashem. All of them Hashem said. Vehu Amar Gam Ke'atiyufta V'chulu. And Hashem himself is the one that said, this halacha is, in Yiddish we say, abgefragt. It's like the removed. This means all of it is a part of Torah which is everlasting. If this is so concerning matters of the revealed part of Torah, how much more so that this is in the matters of the inner part of the Torah. Even a possible opinion, a suggested opinion, it's part of Torah which is everlasting. But above the in the spiritual realms, the way they come to the conclusion is according to the second opinion, not according to the first opinion. So therefore, this could be the reason, or this idea is these. In other words, even what the Philosophim suggested is something that Torah believes in or considered Torah, but not as the accepted final reasoning. But the Rebbe still wants to know, still it demands and needs explanation. Why did the Alter Rebbe and the Maimer bring initially the explanation of the philosophers, and then he pushed it away? Top of page Zayin as Hapirush Shemasik. He didn't bring initially the explanation that the Alter Rebbe does follow. This is especially difficult since this is the inner part of the Torah. The last there's no questions over there. There's no dispute. So therefore, it doesn't follow to bring in a question, an opinion that is not valid, seemingly. So the Rebbe says that perhaps there is a reason to bring it in to tell you what not to follow. He says in line 3, seemingly you could say, the reason why this explanation was brought is to know that this explanation is negated. It's like the reason in Nigla to bring the opinion that is negated. The Chazal explain that why does the Mishnah bring an opinion that we don't follow? Why doesn't it just bring the halacha? So the Chazal explain the reason why that is done is that in case someone comes up with a certain svara and said, well, perhaps, maybe this is a correct svara, maybe if they would have known of this or whatever. So the Mishnah brings in the alternate explanation and it says that's wrong and this is not what we follow this. So that's why the Mishnah brings in inyanim in halacha that we don't follow. It's the same thing that Rebbe wants to say, that perhaps the reason why the Alter Rebbe brings in this opinion of the philosophers, which is not followed, is to let us know that this is something that we don't, it's not a possible other reason. The Shivim Pan La Torah. The Alter Rebbe says this, but maybe the philosopher's reason is also applicable. So therefore he has to bring in this reason as well. So the Rebbe is going to ask, but still, why bring it in first? To negate it and make sure that we don't follow that reason, there's no reason to bring that in first. So he says in line 6, but we cannot say that is the reason, why, or the sole reason why the Alter Rebbe brings in this explanation. This explanation that was pushed away is the first explanation in Likutei Torah. Now, this guy, he got daf halten kop, like we say in Yiddish. What is the difference between the explanation of the philosophers versus the explanation that the Alter Rebbe gives. The explanation of the philosophers is that since Isha Mazras Tchila, therefore the final one that gave in the seed was the male. That's why the male is born. Is born. A male child is born. So that means we don't follow the first. We follow the last. That's the point. We follow the last, since the male is the last. He comes after the woman, and that's why there's a male child. In the second explanation of the Torah, which we said first, is the idea that who was Mazriya, in other words, who was the one that was Mashpia. The Mashpia, which is the first and the higher one, is because this was the Mashpia that gave. So we're going according to the first. So the first explanation of Alter Rebbe in Torah is that we're following the last, and the last explanation, the second explanation of the Torah, is that we follow the first. Let's see the way the Rebbe says this here in the Maimer. So he says in line 8 again, this itself is the content of the difference between the two explanations why a male is born in such an instance. According to the first explanation, the first explanation is saying that the last droplet is the one that overpowers. That's why when a woman is the first one, then you let a zocher, then a male is born because he has zocher shebesayv goiver, because the droplet from the male is what overpowers. According to the second explanation, which is the final and accepted explanation of the Alter Rebbe, Harishon goiver, it's because the first is the one that is the more powerful one. The reason why she gives birth to a male, because the male is coming from the seed of the woman that was first being mazriya. In other words, it was a level of hashpa, like we said before, that the fact that Isha Mazras Tchila, the function of Hazra, the function of Zriya, is a mashpia function in the woman itself. In the woman itself, the mashpia function, the chesed, the masculine of the woman, is what is first, and that's why gives birth to a masculine, to a male child. So what comes out, that in the first explanation, we're giving importance to the last thing that happens. In the second explanation, we're giving importance to the first thing that happens. So the Rebbe goes on and says in line 14, from this it's also understood in Torah that the first explanation was not said just to negate it, like we said before, that the Mishnah says a lot of times an opinion that doesn't follow Allah, to make sure that you don't follow it. But rather because in the thing itself there is something positive that there is to be learned out from it. This, we could say, is the deeper in meaning in what it says in the letter of the Rebbe's father, that even when the Torah says something that is a possible suggestion, it's a chelik b'Torah, meaning even something that the Torah, that the Gemara, let's say, dismisses, it has something positive in it as well. So now the Rebbe is going to explain this concerning the case over here with these two cases. We could say the reason why this possibility of the philosophers is brought down this Maimer, in this Maimer itself, it's explained the intermingling of Gvura and Chesed. Therefore, he brings in Torah this Maimer, something that is a negated thing, which negation has to do with Gvura. From that you derive that there's also something positive. So in other words, you're having the intermingling that even if something that's negated, you find something positive as well.